Starting out with the latest here on Hurricane Erin. That actually should be adjusted from Tropical Storm Erin to Hurricane Erin. So forgot to change that content down on the bottom there where you're seeing it. Let's see if we can go ahead and fix that for you. We'll do it right now. There you go. Now it's fixed. Hurricane Erin, 75 mile per hour Category 1 hurricane is now vertically stacked. It's starting to lose that northeasterly shear, and the shear is pretty obvious over the last couple of days as it's been a weaker storm that has been out of the north and east, and you can still see some of that effects here on the tail and the outflow of it, but starting to get that starburst type of pattern around the center of the storm, so shear definitely lessening overall, as well as it is climbing off to the north and west now. It actually took a harder north turn over the last 4 to 6 hours, so gaining latitude as it's gaining strength as expected, and this storm should work all the way up to a Category 4 hurricane before it is all said and done. This is still has some question marks as to how close it comes to the Carolina coastline, but overall the modeling here is only shifted a couple hundred miles away from Bermuda, which is right there. So it was much closer to Bermuda, and now it's shifted about that far, a couple hundred miles, and now it's about that far. So it still has several hundred more miles to go before it ever got anywhere close to the Outer Banks or the Carolina coastline. So that is some excellent news. This is definitely going to be a fish storm. As if you have been following me from the very beginning, that's what I have said from the very beginning, is that I thought that this would end up getting that curve and shooting the gap between Bermuda and the U.S. Looks like that was a correct assessment here with the modeling, holding on to that as well, starting to narrow in down on that. So let's take a closer look at exactly what is going on in the tropics, and we'll switch off of the analysis here. Don't worry, we're going to come back to it, and we'll show the water vapor. We also had that wave that was in the Bay of Campeche as well as the Gulf. That has now moved into Texas, so no longer an issue. Nothing going on in the Pacific, and like I said, that wave that was in the Gulf is now moved into Texas, never developed, so we did not get a tropical depression out of that. Erin certainly much healthier than it was, say, 48 hours ago, and it will continue to do so as it's gotten all of its gears together. So here you can see that harder turn off to the north and west on that last update. It's probably going to hold that setting and that motion over the next 3 days or so. By the time we get to Monday, we're going to start to see it turn more off to the north, and sometime on Tuesday it'll turn north and then northeast, and that'll be around Bermuda. So good news is, even though this is a formidable storm, it's going to be producing some big old waves as well as some dangerous rip currents. It is forecasted to stay relatively far away from land. It's going to get kind of uncomfortably close to the Bahamas, as well as maybe uncomfortably close, depending on what your definition of close is, to the Carolina coastline, but should be comfortable enough, as this is just going to be a wave producer as well as a rip current maker, and that is the big assessment and the big win here from this storm. It should start to really catch some shear as it interacts with that trough, and you can see that trough axis here as it gets toward the red arrows. And funny enough, while I have shifted around the steering flow, I actually haven't all week long touched where the red arrows here are. So where I originally drew in early on this week where this thing would turn and go, I haven't adjusted that at all. So this has not been changed one little bit. As we go forward in time, however, our attention will go away from Erin as it catches that weakness in the ridge and catches the trough and gets pulled out to sea. It will turn extra tropical pretty quickly as shear starts to work on it. And then we're going to start to worry about that following wave. And you've probably already seen social media talking about the wave and on the GFS or whatever it may be, because you know all those people that were talking about Erin just destroying the U.S. from Texas up to Maine. That certainly happened, and they were right about all those June hurricanes that never happened. They're certainly going to be right about the long-range output of the GFS. Now, the Euro has nothing at this point in time. However, I would give it maybe about a 20% chance that we are looking at something there. This is another classic example of wait until the wave comes off of the coast of Africa, because as we go back, I told you we'd come back to our analysis here. We're going to see that this wave is still way back here. It is actually not this wave, it is this one. So this is coming off the coast today. That's going to follow up behind Erin, and then it's this following wave that'll come off the coast tomorrow. By the time we get to Tuesday, it should be somewhere in this general vicinity of next week, and that's when we could start to see some development on it. Now, the Euro leaves it a far more vertically stacked. It leaves it much taller. It doesn't really kind of breaks off a piece of energy down here along the intertropical convergence zone, or the ITCZ. That's just where our trade winds are constantly converging, and with that you get this motion of cloud cover and shower and thunderstorm activity just on the north side of the equator here. So that is always present, and we get these little tropical waves, or these storm pieces of energy that come off the coast of Africa. And typically when they come off the coast of Africa and they start to get amplified, meaning they get lifted to the north, that's when we see them crash over on top of themselves, and that's when we start to see those waves develop. So the faster that can happen, and if you remember back to Erin here, that actually happened really quickly, and that was thanks to an upper level low that was crashing into Spain that helped to amplify the ITCZ and helped to let that kind of crash as it worked across the Cape Verde Islands there, and has tracked basically like this at this point in time. So pretty much along the forecast as expected, this has tracked. So while the operational models, the models that get shared all over social media, have been just absolutely atrocious with Erin, the ensemble models, which show you the spread of all possible solutions, have done a really good job with Erin. Even from the very beginning, a lot of the members were showing a relative curve, or at least somewhat of a curve. It was probably about a 60% chance that this storm was going to curve from the very beginning. So the ensemble models have actually done a pretty decent job. We'll see how that goes. Right now, with this wave being back here, the ensembles really only give this about a 20 or 30% chance of even being a wave or developing anything right there. And then as we go down the road, let's say to not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, the ensemble spread is about 40% at this point in time, and it has solutions basically all across there. So it could be a storm that develops and gets shot off to the north and finds some weakness in the subtropical ridge. It could be one that goes a little further off to the south, like what the GFS has at the current moment, or it could be even further south than that, and it could be tracking into the Caribbean. So we really won't know much about that wave until it does end up somewhere around that area. So that's what we're looking at right now. Overall, again, good news is that the only thing going on in the Atlantic at the current moment is Erin, and this is really, for all intents and purposes, going to be a fish storm, because it's not going to do quite like that. It's going to go something like this and out to sea. I might even got that kink right, because you can see that there is a low pressure system here. This is actually going to get absorbed up into Erin, but storms don't really combine. One just kind of fails and the other one takes over. So you don't really have two pieces of energy come together and make a bigger piece of energy. You really just get one to fail and the other one to become dominant. That's all that happens. There is a funny name for the dance that happens around two areas of low pressure. It's called a Fujiwara effect. It's where they kind of dance around each other. That can happen with any low pressures. It can happen with tornadoes. It can happen with hurricanes. It can happen with synoptic lows. It can happen with mesoscale lows. So any low pressure system can have that kind of funny dance. Elsewhere, going across the tropic, like I said, nothing going on really. There's still lots of dry air here. Funny enough, as we go long enough into the future, if we don't get one of these waves that are coming off of Africa to develop, we likely see the subtropical ridge work back into a very strong position here, and both models show that, which would help to drive more dry air across the Saharan desert, pull that out into the Atlantic, and help to displace the ITCZ further off to the south, which would be a suppressing force for tropical development. So our attention would go away from the MDR, and then we'd have to wait and see if any kind of cold fronts or pieces of energy could be pulled off of South Africa, or South America rather, and into the Caribbean. to get something going. But it could be that if we don't get one of these waves to develop after Erin, we may not be talking about anything tropical until September. So take that to all the hype pages that always want to go to the next wave because they've been wrong about every wave so far this year. So we'll see. Eventually, one of these long-range signals that show a storm developing and working toward the U.S. will work out. It's going to have to time out with the subtropical ridge being strong and further off to the south and west. That'll help guide these waves closer to the U.S. But at the moment, good things are happening as far as Erin goes. And